Access and Equality in Higher Education. Today, he will be speaking on transforming teaching learning, new trends in higher educational institutes. Sorry for the delay, sir. I now invite Professor Menon to address the participants of the Faculty Development Program.
Thank you, Dr. Kapoor. Can I request you one thing? Can you just tell me a little bit about my audience?
They are teachers, assistant professors and associate professors in the various universities of India in Delhi and outside Delhi.
How many of them are they?
They're more about 700 or so.
Oh my God. Okay.
Yes, and this is on you are associated on Zoom as well as YouTube Live.
Okay. Okay. Good. Thank you, Dr. Kapoor. I'll try and finish it in about half an hour because
so you
said
time,
1:15. You said, no? The session ends at 1:15. I'll ensure that it's ending at that time. Yeah. I must thank the SP Mukherjee College and particularly Dr. Kapoor and the principal for having invited me. I always love to come for faculty development workshops, particularly in SPM. I have gone there many times. And but this is the first faculty development workshop I'm actually addressing virtually. So it's a bit strange because it's a even in a live program, sometimes they put you on a stage and the stage is always lit and the audience is dark. And I find it very difficult to address looking at darkness. So I always am used, I'm a classroom teacher, I'm used to looking at people's faces and eye contact and stuff. So it's a tough call for us to shift to another mode. But exigencies are such that I think we have to make do with this. So my today's topic, although Dr. Kapoor said it's about new trends and so on, but I'm basically going to talk about the crisis and the opportunity, because I believe that we are going through a crisis, obviously, and every crisis has an opportunity inherent in it. So that's what I'll basically talk about in the context of higher education. And my focus is on undergraduate studies because I assume that I think most of you are connected with liberal undergraduate studies. So my experience is mostly in liberal studies and in undergraduation as well as post-graduation and teacher education. So it will be more authentic for me to talk about what I know. Let me say a couple of things about faculty development workshops of this kind. And I really feel that a faculty development workshops of this kind its major utility is not necessarily only listening to some gyanis who come and speak to you, people like me who have a gray beard and so on, but actually also listening to one another, being able to talk to the peer and so on. So that is something which probably would be somewhat missing in an online faculty development program. I'll come to that in a minute, how we need to probably think of new kinds of content to new kinds of presentation modes in order to fit into a new technological platform. So we can't be using old, how do I put it, and old packages for a new platform. So we need to package whatever we are doing in a slightly different way. I'll come to that in a minute because I'll be talking about that in the context of undergraduate teaching. It's very clear that the pandemic, COVID-19 has disrupted, and the lockdown that came as a consequence of that, has disrupted our academic transaction like no other calamity has hit us in the past, at least within the range of our collective memory. It must have happened before we were born, and so about which we do not know very much. In Second World War, what happened, or some kind of, when the flu of the Spanish flu episode, what happened, I really don't know. But at least in the near past, we have never come across a situation in which we have disrupted to this extent by any other calamity. And the suddenness with which this happened, and also the most pervasive manner in which it happened, took us a lot by surprise, and we were stunned, and we were paralyzed in our thinking. So we tried to do our best in the best way we knew, at least in the Delhi University, where several of us in colleges as well as in departments, I came to know that I think teachers sporadically found out ways in which to reach out to their students, and online became a very major way in which to do this. But having gone through that kind of an experience, one realized how much of a limitation this entire approach has. And we need to understand why we face those limitations and how probably we could have managed to overcome some of those limitations. My sense is that, we stuck to our basic premises, which actually on which is built our understanding of higher education. The premise that the teaching happens in a teacher-centric manner, largely, particularly in higher education, as you know. And second is that we also found that our system is entirely examination oriented, and because that is what lends credibility to the entire process, and certification is an important part, and further admission, further studies, everything is based on the exams and so on. So these two basic premises on which we founded our understanding of higher education was actually very severely questioned by the present pandemic and the lockdown. We tried to fit in, we tried to simulate classroom exercises through synchronous online experiences like the present one, for instance. Should we have, was that the best way? Shouldn't we have thought about other ways? This is something which I would like you to think more about. And let me take this present faculty development workshop, which you and I are participating at the moment. Let's take that as an example. We have about 700 people here, and we are connected with Zoom, because Zoom allows for that kind of, Zoom as a platform would allow for that large numbers of people to listen and interact. Technically, yes, but theoretically, yes, but practically, there is no interaction possible. So what is possible is only you are listening to me. That's all that is possible. So, and I have no way of even assessing and ascertaining whether you are actually getting what I'm saying or not, whether we are getting this message or not, whether the signals are reaching you or not, whether the technology is working or not. And if they do, if the technology is working, then whether what I say is making any sense or not. So this particular case, for instance, it would have been much better if it becomes it collapses into a one-way communication. Why do we have to do this synchronously at all? What is synchronous? Simultaneously, listening and speaking happens simultaneously. So that is synchronous. And why do we have to have a synchronous communication? That's why we have to depend on what is it, Zoom and so on. And this could have been done by recorded lectures being transmitted to all of you, and you're listening it at leisure. You can stop, again, play, pause, everything you could have done. So what I'm trying to say, therefore, is that even in our teaching, I think what our intuition said that, whatever we are used to, we should somehow try to simulate it, try to sort of fit into the new technology. That's what we try to do through our online teaching. In this process, what happened is that, we came across a major, in my opinion, a major equity issue. Well, the first issue is that of digital divide. We know very well, and there were surveys conducted recently to actually say that, how many students really have access to, even in higher education, how many of them have really access to a smartphone or internet connection, leave alone computers at home. And we found that it is only a minority of students who have access to all these things. So and that too, they're dispersed in various parts of the country. In a place like Delhi University, for instance, when the lockdown happened, the students fanned out to their homes in various parts of India, and to reach out to them was an enormously difficult task. So some people could access it, some people could not access it. Even in an actual classroom, when you imagine yourself in an actual classroom with about 50, 60 students sitting there, and then you are giving them some kind of an orientation lecture or a lecture on a particular subject. And we try to generate discussions, but most of these the discussions get confined to a manageable number of people who are invariably, they are the front benchers, they are the enthusiastic ones, they are the wide-eyed listeners of yours, and they are the ones who comprehend what's happening, and they are the ones who are able to share the cognitive kind of preparedness that you expect them to have. And those of them who do not have these things are tend to alienate or tend to feel alienated from the classroom process. This is not very uncommon in our actual classrooms as well. I call it the oil line, because these backbenchers actually in the classroom are reclined, in a supine, semi-supine posture, and some of them are dozing off, some of them are disinterested, and then their oily hair touches the wall behind and creates a oil patch on the wall. So I really feel, I always used to tell my young colleagues in Ambedkar University, whenever we do faculty induction, I used to tell them that, look, focus your attention on that oil patch in the back of the class, because that's where your attention is most needed. That's where your hand-holding is most needed. In a public university, I'm not talking about private elite universities where I think there's a whole lot of people are nth generation higher education seekers. There's a whole culture of higher education at home, so they really don't depend much on what happens in a classroom to be able to learn. Whereas in a public university, in colleges of Delhi University, for instance, or places like Ambedkar or Jamia, or places like that, undergraduate studies, you find that a good number of students who access higher education in these places are the ones who are the products of the new expansion of school education. So they are from among first generation of higher education seekers. They really don't have the cultural capital with them to be able to sort of benefit out of this optimally. So there's a lot of hand holding that is expected from the part of the teachers. There's a lot of hand holding and backstopping that they expect us to provide them. And this is particularly, the language dimension is particularly very significant here, because in Ambedkar, I remember, because I never had taught undergraduation except at Ambedkar University, where I at least indirectly came across problems of students of undergraduate courses, and it should be the same case in SPM or many other colleges as well. And that they come from vernacular medium schools. They are for the first time they are getting into an environment in which English is the mainstay, And so language itself becomes a major dimension of exclusion. They are not able to get into the core of the curricular processes. They are sort of kept at a distance. That oil patch at the back of the class I mentioned a little earlier essentially comes from, a lot of them are people who do not understand what you're speaking. I remember when I started my career in Baroda University, I was 26, and I thought I was a good teacher, and I used to, give my lectures, and we had this 200 strong batch in our beard, and it was a gallery, and this was one of those foundation courses, and in the gallery, it gives a great deal of ego satisfaction for you to address a gallery of students, I used to give these lectures, which I thought were very good. And always there were friend benchers who were nodding and, laughing at my humor and, always having eye contact and always thought that they are comprehending me. And this happened for about 2-3 weeks. And afterwards, a few students came to my room and spoke in Gujarati because they couldn't understand. I couldn't speak in English. The substance of what they said was this: "Sir, you speak so well, so well. You speak so well that we don't understand a word of what you're saying." So in the sense, we are actually performing. We are actually not communicating. This is something which I realized at that point in time. So there isn't any point in actually speaking blindly, unless we really know that cybernetic loop, that communication loop, it gets a feedback. That's why we want to look at people when you speak. That's why when you really look for this nod of comprehension from the students when we speak. So this is really totally absent in the online situation. And particularly a young undergraduate teacher told me the other day, she's a very, very good teacher. And she said it is quite, how do you put it, bewildering, she said. And when you find that because of the technological reasons, everybody shuts off their video. So you find these dark windows, and you are talking to these dark windows, and you have no clue whether people are there or not. They're asleep. They've gone for a something else elsewhere, keeping their computer open. So this is an extremely unnerving situation for a teacher, and particularly at the undergraduate level, because we feel that there we know that they need us to backstop and handhold. So that's one of the major problems in actually trying to fit in whatever we are doing through the new technological platform that's available to us. A second to us, actually, the whole learning possibilities in higher education is so comprehensive that everything can't be fitted into this mode. It is easier for given knowledge, information-oriented stuff, to be presented. I could have PPTs and stuff like that, and then essentially talk about things which are more informative, which is very important. I'm not saying that they're not important, but much of higher education is not just that. It's more than that. It is actually, a lot of that is about developing intellectual skills, developing abilities of analysis, developing abilities of problem solving, developing abilities of making an argument, particularly in social sciences. That becomes a very important thing. You must remember that in undergraduate classes, you are teaching a bunch of students, majority of whom are not going to be specialists in the subject you are going to teach. Suppose I teach history at BA, you must remember that if I teach about 60 students in a batch, not more than about 10-15 students out of them are going to go for MA in history. A majority of them are going to terminate their studies after their PA, and they're getting into the world of work, or they get into something else. So the history I'm talking to them is not with the purpose of creating historians. It is for creating, it's not to create historians that we teach history. We teach history. Some of them might become historians, that of course is true, but a majority of them would use the skills of history for their for them to become more effective adults, more effective citizens, more effective, employees in an employment situation, professionals, and so on and so forth. So it's what is that ability in history? It is the ability to seek evidences, collect evidences, build arguments based on evidences, and then make inferences and come to a conclusion. So it's a intellectual process that is underlying the teaching of history, and this is true with science in any case. We know that, and in many other subjects as well. If it is literature, for instance, it is things like sensibilities, ability to understand nuances of language, again making arguments, and so on and so forth. So what I'm trying to say is that when we teach a subject, it is not the substantive aspect of what we teach that is important. It is actually the competences that are underlying those that are important. So we are not really teaching them just to memorize and reproduce information that we give in our classroom or through our online lecture or whatever, but actually it is what we teach should actually enable them to think and take them through a process of thinking, and that's the only way for them to develop these intellectual skills, analytical skills, and that is one. Second is ability to social learning. Social learning is something which is totally, as I said about this professional development workshop, in a normal professional development workshop which SPM hosts many times, what happens, in my opinion, I think the participants learn a lot during lunchtime, during breaks, during group work, and so on and so forth, because there's a whole lot of how do you put it, reassurance that the young teachers, young professionals derive by knowing that the kind of problems they face are the problems that others, their peers, also face, and they have some unique ways in which to tackle those problems. So this peer learning becomes a very important aspect, and that is true in undergraduation as well. For instance, I'll give you an example of JNU. It's not undergraduation so much. JNU is was known as a institution which attracts people from the real Dehati area, the real village areas, rural areas of Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, and many Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, and all these places. And then in 2 years of MA program, they sort of convert them into people who are able, not only good in the studies, but also in their respective subjects, but also ability to articulate the language English, write in English. There, of course, in DU, of course, we allow people to write in Hindi, the examination, whereas in JNU, they don't. It's writing in English. How do they manage? They actually manage because they are mostly in a residential university, and they learn a great deal, not just from the classroom, but from the hostels, from the canteen, from the group activities that they do together. So there's a lot of peer learning, social learning that happens, debating societies and so on and so forth, which is very common in all undergraduate colleges. I think students really learn a great deal from these kinds of planning forum, debating societies, and nature club, environmental societies, various things that they do enable them to do a lot of two kinds of learning: social learning as well as experiential learning. So experiential learning is another dimension which I think would be lacking in all these online transactions, where I think wherever fieldwork is needed, fieldwork needs to be provided. Wherever lab is required, wherever studios are required, wherever workshops need to be incorporated. So all this variety of ways in which we have to cater to the various kinds of learning objectives that we have in the part of the curriculum. You can't collapse all of them into text, or you can't collapse all of them into lectures. So that is a limitation for this. So if you try to sort of encapsulate everything that we do to just these kinds of online lectures, that probably is insufficient. That is a lesson we have learned through the past 2-3 months. The second thing we learned the past 2-3 months was that about our notions about examinations. We do value a great deal the final examination. That's where we think our credibility is essentially dependent on. People say that Delhi University is known for its timely conduct of exams. Delhi is known for its rigor attached to exams, and so on and so forth. That's all very well. I have no problem on that. But when you are faced with a situation in which we have to fit in this traditional modes of exam into a new platform, what did we do? We followed the same pattern. Only thing is that we made it into such a manner that we can email the question papers to the various students, and they would then write their answers in the same old question papers, but the same way in which they will answer. They will get an hour extra probably for uploading. They upload the whole thing into PDF forms and then send it back to the examination. And the technological challenge that it has is something which we don't even, it's mind-boggling. Imagine the PDF copies of thousands of, thousands of students come in all at the same time. The data traffic that it entails, and ultimately for what purpose? This is something which I think we are still not solved the problem. As you know, High Court of UGC has given its opinion. Delhi government has said that no, none of the colleges belonging to Delhi government will conduct any exam. They will do without the final exam. There is one university, AUD, Ambedkar University, Delhi, which has conducted all its exams. And why has it happened? Why was that possible? I think we should actually probe into that a little bit, and for that, I think we'll defer that particular aspect a little bit. So this whole notion that final exams are very important, this whole notion of external evaluation, that's very important. And that has actually created a whole lot of problems, and we are not able to somehow fit into everything in this new scenario. We can't assemble students even wearing masks and social distances in big examination halls and conduct this examination. That will be disastrous as far as the pandemic contagion is concerned. But at the same time, we really think that we'll be sacrilege if we allow a different kind of exam system to happen. All this, in my opinion, is basically because we have tried to fit in the default understandings of the existing understanding that we have about higher education into a new framework, without realizing that I think if we need to sort of fit into a new platform, then we need to really think of new ways of doing it. And but let us try and reverse this whole thinking, this problem understanding in a slightly different manner. I also feel that this crisis can also be a liberating experience. It can be an opportunity to begin to think about our first principles, about our assumptions. It can be an opportunity for us to question assumptions. Why do we have to do this? Just because we have been doing this for years and years and years doesn't mean that we should continue to do this in the same manner. And this is as good as any opportunity, a time for us to begin to think differently. You must have heard this Kabir ka doha, where it says, "Bhala hua mori gagreed phuti." Have you heard this? "Bhala hua mori gagreed phuti, मैं पनिया भरन से छूटी, मोरे सिर से टली बला." That means basically it says that it's just as well that my pitcher, my pot, got shattered. I'm free of all the holding of water, carrying of water. The burden on my head is gone. So look at it as this experience. This entire pandemic thing has actually created a situation in which this pot of tradition which we used to carry on our head, and suddenly we find that the pot has broken. It can't hold water anymore. Rather than lamenting about it, let's think that this is a great opportunity. At least we don't have to carry this burden with us, the burden of tradition with us anymore. We can think afresh. So how can we think afresh? That is the next part of my presentation is on that. And I'll focus on only two things. One is the teaching learning. The other is actually on examination, because these are the critical part of our whatever we do as teachers. My sense is that the COVID-19 pandemic has hit two core beliefs that were the basis of our higher education system. One is that the higher education has to be essentially campus-centered, and it has to be teacher-centered. So that's why we had this whole idea of attendance and attendance records and classroom participation, teachers going to the classroom, teachers' own attendance and everything, and this whole sacrosanctity that we attach to everybody congregating together and listening to somebody from for 40 minutes or 55 minutes or whatever, and then going into the next and so on. This entire system of a 40 people, 50 people sitting quietly in a room and listening to one person who keeps on talking for 50 minutes at a stretch, and then another person coming and speaking for another 50 minutes at a stretch, and so on and so forth. This was the mainstay, whether we like it or not, of our liberal studies undergraduate education. The second holy cow, so to say, in our higher education system was the examination-centered view, as I mentioned earlier. So the campus-centered, teacher-centered orientation of our higher education, our notions of higher education, and the examination-centered notion, the notion that examination-centered is the primary aspect of our higher education. These two was attacked critically by the COVID-19. I consider COVID-19 has been a great calamity, but I would certainly consider this as been a great revolutionizing experience. It made us think, that made us question some of these things which we would otherwise have taken another 50 years to begin to question. In fact, some of these aspects we have already questioned and reformed and then come back, regressed back. A good example is semester system and grading. University Grants Commission had actually stipulated that there should be grading in semester system in 1970s. Delhi University had grading in semester system at that point in time. And then we regress back to an annual system and mark system and so on. And then again, we had to go back when the regime changed, when the University Grants Commission again came in 2010 or 11, I forget now when. Again, the credit-based, choice-based credit system and all this. Reluctantly, we are still not convinced that we should do it, but we are doing it. So there is a enormous, how do you put it, regressive, I wouldn't say regressive, enormous force of historicity in what we do. We stick to what we are used to doing. We all tend to stick to confine ourselves within our comfort zones. We really don't want to get out of it. Philip Altbach, the distinguished higher education scholar, had studied Indian higher education a great deal. So he said that at one point that Indian higher educators, Indian academics, are extremely good when it comes to critiquing the larger society. They have very radical ideas of how society itself can be transformed and changed, and assumptions should be questioned and so on and so forth. But when it comes to their own practices, universities' own practices, they are not ready to do the same. A good example is actually our, we are a profession which evaluate everybody. Mm-hmm. It is our prerogative to evaluate everybody. But when it comes to somebody evaluating us, we start kicking and screaming. So this, I think, is something which we need to really begin to think about, a contradiction that is inherent in this particular thing. We need to work away. I know that I'm saying this, which is not very popular among my colleagues, but I'm just provoking you and encouraging you to think about some of these aspects as well, because this is as opportune a time to do so as any. So first, let me take about the shifting from teacher-centered to learner-centered mode. Whether pandemic or no pandemic, I think from even the post-pandemic situation, I'm told that pandemic will continue for another, till the vaccines are administered, and vaccine is likely to be administered to 1.3 billion people not earlier than the end of 2021, I'm told. So in all probability that we are going to be seeing a decongregated campuses, higher education as well as schools, till for 2 academic years, 2021 and 21-22. I hope I'm wrong, but it's quite likely that may happen. But that's all right. Even if these 2 years is nothing in comparison to the lifespan of higher education in India. But so let's think about the post-COVID-19 situation. Even in the post-COVID-19 situation, there is no reason for us to regress back to the good old system. We can actually take off from where we are left off. One of the things I would certainly encourage people to do is think about multiple modes, teaching strategies which involve multiple modes, multiple media, multiple sites, which is self-pacing, learner-centered approaches. So when I say multiple modes means, I think it will be using all kinds of modes for whatever purposes. Like for instance, we already use some of them. Don't we send PDF copies of readings to our students? We do through email. So whether we like it or not, even in our traditional classrooms, we use an element of online in it. Okay, we have tutorials, we have other kinds of projects we use. We have things like fieldwork. We have joint group work, which people do on the campus or the field. We also have internships. So let's understand what these are. Multiple modes would actually mean that for educational objectives, the learning objectives are varied. And for each kind of objectives, we need to have different kinds of approaches to teaching learning. A mode of teaching which is essentially based on teachers' talk or teachers' lectures or textual material is only catering to one kind of learning. That's very important aspect of learning. I'm not undermining that, but that's only one. Other kind of learning needs other kinds of methods. So we need to use them. And most of it, I think we need to understand, particularly in a heterogeneous classroom situation, in an institute situation like we have in public higher education systems in India. We know that I think the people will have different paces, different times they will take to learn the same thing. So they need to be allowed different paces. So anything which is group oriented is actually pushing them into a certain schedule. I think we should loosely make it available to people to engage with learning materials at their own pace. This is something which we need to think about. And multiple sites is another. Learning at home, learning on campus, learning at work, learning in the field. All these things need to be centered together. There are many other examples. I would have elaborated on this much more, but we have only another 5 minutes or so. So I should, not use this. Whenever internet can be used, it's not. I'm basically a skeptic of internet online learning. I've also written newspaper articles on this, and which of course has made me very unpopular among some of my colleagues in educational technology. They thought that I was a student of education technology. How can I be stabbing them from the back? But the idea is this: that internet or internet-based system, which is asynchronous, that is not happening at the same time, or synchronous. Asynchronous, good example is actually an email. It's an internet thing. But then I sent an email to you, and you can sort of open its content and its attachments and view whenever you have the time. Whereas a Zoom is something which is synchronous. I speak and you must listen. Otherwise, if it's not recorded, then you can't even go back to it. So if you miss it, you miss it. So that is a synchronous thing. But we need to really choose and use whenever we need it. There's no point in using it for the sake of using. Another thing is that online cannot be a complete comprehensive alternative to the traditional. There's nothing like a completely traditional, completely online. We can't make fetishes out of conventional face-to-face teaching or about online. I think we need to really think of pragmatic matches, mix and match, and combinations of both these things. And that is one aspect. And second is actually of flipped classrooms. We need to, flipped classroom is not just a technique, it's a philosophy. It's a philosophy in the sense we realize that interaction where people are assembling together to listen to somebody or to interact with somebody or discuss with one another is a precious time. And that time to be used should be used not for just transmitting information. That time should be used for actually for a larger for a higher level thinking, for analysis, for interpretations, for citing various examples and assembling together, challenging premises, questioning assumptions, debates, and so on and so forth. I think that's where I think the real stimulation for intellectual growth happens. This is particularly the case with the social sciences and humanities. And in sciences, we should think of appropriate examples. I'm sure that there can be other places where I think it can be used in a different way. So the classrooms become an opportunity for a higher level cognitive transaction, and non-classroom activities are for gathering information and doing self-work and doing the group work and working in pairs and working in the field, that experiential learning and the library-based learning, archival work, assembling literature together and making an annotated bibliography. All these things actually are can be done outside classroom. So this is one. And the second is actually we must think very seriously about what, particularly at the undergraduate level, creating more and more smaller courses, which in a cafeteria approach, so that students should have the freedom of assembling things together. As I said earlier, a student of economics or history or mathematics or whatever, not every undergraduate student is going to become mathematicians. So those of them who are interested, mathematicians or economists or historians, so those of them who are interested in specializing, they can take more of those courses in the discipline. Others should actually have the freedom of spreading out a little bit and making it a little more broad-based. You can call it like the American 4-year system, where the liberal studies programs are very broad-based. You can have music and physics together, and theater and sociology together, and so on. Some of these kinds of things have been attempted in Ambedkar when we were there. I think so. We have very interesting combinations of literature students also taking theater as one of the course, and or sociology students taking courses in mathematics, or psychology students taking courses in music, and so on. I think all these are possibilities which one should actually, and the enrollment, the whole notion of enrollment will soon become something very different. It will be like a footfall on a, so that it will not be like we have 1,500 people enrolled in SPM college for BA program in history, or BA programs, all the BA programs put together. Instead of saying that, we would say that our undergraduate liberal studies program in a year has a footfall of something like 5,000 students. Some of them may take only one trimester of course, and some of them may take a whole year of course, and some of them may take one combination, another set of people will take another combination, and so on. All these are possible. And by the way, this is not unprecedented. In many universities elsewhere in the world, they follow this kind of a thing. I think it's about time for us to start some of these kinds of things. Another thing is that we have a tradition of open and distance learning in this country. We have some very good open universities. They have tried to advance possibilities within this array of open and distance. Our problem has been that we see these as distinct compartments: conventional teaching and open and distance learning. I think it's about time for us to sort of break the walls in between these two, and create a more diffused and continuous continuum between open mode to a more campus-based, teacher-centered mode. So it's a continuum more than categories, distinct categories. So teacher-centered, learner-centered is one continuum. Campus-based to multiple sites is another continuum. Structured and group-based to self-learning is a third continuum. Like that, there are multiple continua, I think, on which I think we can plot our curriculum structure, and that would probably make a lot of sense in the post-COVID era. Finally, a couple of words on examination. Let's imagine, at least as a thought experiment, let us imagine that there is no examination. I mean, in 10 years ago, in 2008, 2009, when in Ambedkar University, we formulated our evaluation system, we decided we will not have, one thing we will not have in that university is a office of the controller of examinations. There is no controller of examination. Evaluation is what teachers do. It is considered to be part of teaching. It is not separate, distinct from teaching. And evaluation is a continuous process. So we, in our statute concerning that, they say that there are, we call it in the assessment episodes. So there can be many assessment episodes. There can be 10 assessment episodes for a course, a one semester course. But we only stipulate one thing: not one episode should have more than, no episode should have more than 40% of the total weightage. That's so you can have maximum chunking is possible. Is actually we should have 40% and 30 and 30. That means 3 episodes. But you can have 10 episodes, all 10% each, or 4 episodes with 25% each, or another system in which the final thing is 30%. The rest is 7 episodes which are 10% each. Whatever. All these are possible. So that makes the whole pressure of conducting the final examination much more reduced. Why did Ambedkar University this year were able to complete their entire coursework? They have started admission for the next year already on online. You must have seen in the papers. It is only because examination is decentralized. Yes. In a place like Delhi University, I would even urge that I think we should consider devolving evaluation to colleges. Colleges conducts its own the exam, not by having many controller of examinations there, but they would devolve it further to teachers. People may ask, what about standards? What about disparities? Some colleges may give more marks. Some people, I said, so what? You can have one element of external assessment in it by bringing in a viva voce or bringing in a jury or whatever. If one college is habitually is giving more marks, it's okay. Market will eventually, decide. Oh, this is a liberal college. This is more strict college, etc. So the further studies should be dependent on entrance examinations, which are distinct. The degree completion is only an eligibility condition, and there we can't say 50% or 55, etc. Instead, we say completing the degree is all the eligibility that is required. And after that, if you want to go for MA, have an entrance examination and conduct separately. Otherwise, the subset of minority of students who are actually pursuing post-graduation, for them, I think these marks are important. For them, I think we make an entire, in Delhi University, for instance, there are, I think, if you don't include the correspondence courses, we have something like 250,000 students, if I'm not mistaken. Out of 250,000 students, and after graduation must be about 200,000. And about 200,000 students, not more than 20,000, 30,000 students actually pursue post-graduation. The rest of them are not pursuing post-graduation. Why do we have to drag everybody into this examination system? And that we have to begin to trust the teachers. We have to begin to trust the fairness of teachers. And how many, there has to be moderations, etc. as possible within institutions, across institutions. All these are possible, but we need to think about those things. I would tend to think that unless we get rid of examining, I would even go to the extent of saying that get rid of the board exams. There is no need of a 12th standard board. Let Delhi University conduct its own entrance examination for the undergraduation. Why BLED already conducts and some others already conduct? Why do we have to BA English conducts its own exams? But why do we have to do based it on board exam? Just because of our easiness of admissions, we can't really impose a system of board exam in the whole country. In exigency like this year, for instance, we found that conducting board exam was a big issue. Why should it be a big issue? It should actually be left to the schools to actually arrive at, school systems to arrive at their own exams and how they conduct it. This is the rest of the world do that way. And it's about time for us also to move towards this idea. And I would stop here. I'll again invoke Kabir once more. I don't have the original Hindi though. I mean, is Awadhi of what language did he? Bhojpuri, right? Which Bhojpuri was it?
I'm not very good at it.
Yeah. Anyway, it basically says in the same vein. It says it's just as well my prayer beads have scattered. I'm free of all those holy chatter. The burden on my head is gone. So I would say that this entire gyan which we used to consider as our as sacrosanct, based on which the entire higher education edifice of higher education system was created. I think it's about for time to sort of let that gyan off and begin to build a new gyan on that. I think that is an opportunity which I think the COVID-19 will provide. COVID-19 has provided many opportunities. Many of us have started cooking. Many of us started being with family much more than we used to. Many of us have started, doing physical exercises, learning music, all kinds of things. So let us, as a profession also, it's about time for us to rethink our own profession and rethink of the area of our profession, namely higher education, afresh, from very fresh set of first principles, with now that we are combating with this terrible pandemic. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Menon, for throwing light on key concerns in the area of undergraduate education and how it has been impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. You made us think that we should be thinking, our thinking should be changed. We should be thinking, reimagining, revisioning education now. And this is the right time to do it. Revisioning how teaching learning should take place and how examination should take place. We can do teaching learning, as you stressed, the multiple mode system. These teaching strategies will go a long way in trying to help our students and enliven their learning. And the examination system has to be revisioned. And frankly, the COVID-19, as you have said, has pointed it out that it needs to be refashioned with the present time. We don't need to be making it into a system where we have to have external examination. We should trust the teacher. That's very important, trusting the teacher. We've forgotten that in the whole rigmarole of teaching, the teacher is actually paramount. Let us trust her for a thing. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Now we have to deal with the questions, sir.
Oh, are there? Okay, I thought that probably people are so tired now.
We have to find out, sir.
Okay, take a couple of them and then we'll talk about it. Otherwise, people will miss their lunch.
One of my colleagues was going to. Alok, you will have to help me with the question.
Sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Shivani.
Yeah.
Thank you, Shivani. Will lead them.
I'm Shivani George from SPM College, sir. I'll be asking.
Shivani.
Yes, sir. Hi. Asking questions on behalf of the participants. One question is from Pushpa Kumari, and she asks, how can we provide experiential learning in today's scenario of pandemic where all teaching learning is happening virtually?
Yeah, as I said, I was not talking about just the pandemic situation. Pandemic is a very peculiar situation, but I'm actually talking about the post-pandemic situation as well. But even in pandemic situation, experiential learning is still possible. It's not that every experiential learning is campus-centered. A lot of experiential learning is about, like, for instance, I'll give you an example. Psychology, child psychology, we teach child development. A lot of that is about infant observation, making copious notes of what's happening with a particular child, or things like that. So I'm not saying that we must create every experiential learning has to be in terms of taking them for a field work or field trip, or it has to be organized in terms of some workshop in the college or a lab and so on. Certain things are not possible, that we agree. But whatever is possible needs to be explored. I think that's the message which I'm trying to say. Even at a time when in the post-pandemic situation, I would urge to say that let's think of alternative ways of doing experiential learning. And wherever experiential learning is required, have it. I'll give an example. For instance, we teach historical methods. And it's a probably good idea for students to actually do a little bit of an historical inquiry on a very small subject through archival ways or through internet-based archival. They can sit at home and do it, or actually oral history, talking to one's grandparents about something's happened. The grandparent who remembered the Second World War experiences, document that and corroborate it something else. So this is actually history in making. This is what I call an experiential learning. So experiential learning is not something which can happen only in a lab. It can happen in many different ways. Idea is not to really say that, oh, everything is possible without on-campus experiences. Definitely not. Think whatever is possible, we should make use of. That is what is more important.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Another question I'm taking. This is by Bhavna Bisht. She is asking, what specifically should be done for the students of remote/rural areas who do not have access to technology, internet? How we can approach them in these present situations?
See, that's a very, very relevant question. For instance, I think even in Delhi University, it doesn't have to be remote. The university can be situated in a metropolitan city, the capital of India. But our students are scattered all over because of the pandemic and the evacuation of our hostels. They went back to all kinds of places. They're remote Jharkhand, remote Madhya Pradesh. Some of them are in Northeast. Some of them are in other tribal areas and so on. So how do we reach them? So this is a moral dilemma that we have. When we say, okay, we are going to conduct so many online classes, and we almost are blind to the reality in terms of how many of them are really able to participate. We can't deprive them of something just because of their location, just because of their social background. So we need to think about alternatives. That's where redundancy is an important thing in any strategy. If one aspect of the strategy does not work, then there has to be other alternatives which are available. In this case, for instance, I would even consider that a Google, what is it called, Zoom-based or Google-based online synchronous teaching is the best way. In fact, that itself is questionable. But assuming that it is the best way, then I would say that create, while we are doing it, we also record it and make it available through, upload it and send it across through email or WhatsApp or something like that. They can take it and use it whenever they want. Or I would even go to the extent of saying that create a parallel thing through textual materials and mail it to them, post it to them, so whatever. So the idea is, the endeavor is to reach them no matter where they are, no matter under what circumstances they are. Onus is not on them to somehow reach us, because it's really not possible. I'll give you an example. The example is particularly about girls, and the SPM is a girls' college and women's college, and they should know. See, a young woman who is confined at home because of this are drawn upon, in our culture, is drawn into all kinds of domestic activities,
yes,
which a young man is not. So when you say that, okay, now sit and study with a computer or a cell phone, the elders in the family, in one of my cases, one of my students was telling me, the elders in the family, Taoji was asking, why is this girl always sitting with a phone and talking? Who is she talking to? My point is, I think culturally it is not very encouraging for girls to study at home, frankly speaking. Yeah, it is. I would even say that a campus-based thing is very important for girls, not just to learn, but also to interact with other girls and also to get away from the patriarchy clutches at home for a little bit. So that apart. But I do think that we need to really think of redundancy in our strategies. If one element of the strategy doesn't work, then we should have buffers. We can't lay all our eggs in one basket and assume that, I think, oh, everybody gets it.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Another question I will take. Vinadi, can I ask one more question?
Yes, you can. Yeah.
This is by Rimi Nandi, and she's asking, what is the best way of developing analytical thinking among students?
See, obviously the best way is not to have a separate subject called analytical thinking. That defeats the purpose. I mean, analytical thinking is inherent in almost everything that we teach. Everything that we teach, particularly not only in the sciences, which is, I think, understandable, but also in the social sciences and humanities, even humanities, literature. I think the idea is to bring out the possibility of analysis in whatever textual material we do. Even a text reading is an analytical process. That's why we say that children, young people should know how to engage with the text. Engage with the text is not just reading. It is not even reading with comprehension. It is actually an analytical exercise. It is actually reading in such a manner that you are able to put it in a framework. You are able to examine whether some of the basic questions that you have in your mind are addressed by the textual material or not, and where are the, and how it can be, your critique, all these kinds of things comes out. To think that analysis, there is a possibility of analysis in everything. And not just analysis, but also gathering evidences, using evidences to substantiate a standpoint and or refute another standpoint, create a debate, making an argument. These are all using analysis in some sense, building it up. But those are the important things. The students, most of your students, if you're teaching chemistry or if you're teaching economics or if you're teaching history, most of the students who do not specialize in these things further in life, they are going to go to other things in life. They will forget almost everything substantively that you have taught in the classroom. But what will remain with them is actually these analytical abilities. Abilities that have been derived from the process of learning a discipline. Those are the ones which remain with them, not the substance of the discipline itself. They may not be able to say, a history student after 10 years, you can't ask, oh, which was the year in which such and such thing happened. She may not remember. But that is what we can ask. They may be able to say that, okay, do you agree with this conclusion or that conclusion? How do we weigh two conclusions? Not just history, but on anything. Even an argument which is politically presented through a newspaper, I think he should be able to, or she should be able to sort of assess the claims made by opposing people and see which has more evidences supporting it, which does not have more evidences supporting it. So that ability to do that is something which I think we should focus on, not just ratifying or memorizing some facts which we give in classroom. This is the substance of whatever I was trying to say.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Professor Menon. This pandemic has made us think and rethink about our education and maybe refashion it. Thank you so much for making us think.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kapoor. It helped me collect my own thoughts. Enjoyed talking to you. I would have loved it to see all the 700 people.
Yes, face to face would have been very nice.
I would have really loved it, but it's okay. I think this is as good as
best of the situation, sir.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you very much, and congratulate you for doing this.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, Dr. Kapoor.
Hanji. Now we will meet again at around about 10 to 3.
Yeah, is Dr. Geeta Sharma there?
Right, let's see. I can't say. Doesn't matter. Now you can all go and go for lunch and come back over 10 to 3, right?
Yeah. Please present the vote of thanks for today's 2 sessions, Veenadi. Or should I?
You can do that.
Okay. A very good afternoon, a very warm welcome and good afternoon to all the participants in this second day of the FPP. I really hope you all are enjoying and enriching from these experiences. I would like to thank Dr. Sadhna Sharma, Dr. S.P. Agrawal for providing us this opportunity to conduct this FDP. I would like to thank both our speakers, our esteemed guests who have given thought-provoking lectures, all the people who are participating in this seminar, in this FDP. I would like to thank them from the core of my heart. The whole team is here to help you in any possible way. So thank you all. Thank you, Dr. Geeta Sharma, for conducting the first session, and thank you, Dr. Kapoor, for conducting the second session. Alok ji, Nirupma, everyone who's joined here, I thank you all. Okay, so Alok ji, is there any announcement to make?
I think there's one, Shivani.
Yes.
One announcement. I think that every participant, if they have a question, they should write it in the chat box. It is very important.
Yes, yes.
That thing, I think we did not mention that earlier. You must write your question in the chat box.
Yes.
That's very
Please
essential.
write all your questions in the question and answer box.
Sorry, question and answer box. You must do that. It was not there. Please
we
do
have
that,
been
please.
taking questions, like this session it is already 15 minutes past 1:15. So we could not take all the questions, but we will try and get answers for you. Thank you so much. And we will join again at 2:50 or 2:55.
2:55 is fine.
2:55 is fine.
That's the time a speaker will also be here.
Alok ji is there?
I don't think he
मैम
हाँ है चलो ठीक
आलोक जी बताएं
कितने बजे आना है
अब बताना उनके पास सबके पास टाइम तो है ना 2:40 में 2:40 में एंट्री करेंगे 2:45 हमने 3 बजे किया है ना
3 बजे का टाइम है आलोक जी
हाँ तो 2:50 में एंट्री सब लोग कर लेंगे
हाँ ठीक है
बहुत
अब हम एग्जिट करें
मैंने एंड कर
एग्जिट नाउ
दिया